What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode with AB Investments. I want to say thank you so much to all the family members that have stood by me and was there for me and wished me a happy, or get better and supported me throughout those rough times that I had as far as when I did the procedure last week. And AB is in much better spirits and health now. Thank you so much again from the bottom of my heart, family. Thank you so much. And with that being said, I have a message that I would like to get across to everybody, and I hope it gets to everybody from the AMC community. Everybody. It doesn't matter what sides you see, and yeses and nos and all that stuff. And if you hear my message out clearly and understand it, you would probably understand why. Hopefully it can expand your horizons a bit to understand that this is not about a yes or a no. And this is not about just an individual, whether a CEO or a board. This is much bigger. It's much bigger. It's a scheme of a whole entire system that decided to technically do some insidious stuff, some devious things that were, however way you would feel about that weird 19 situation. And the way that banks were already being bailed out before any crazy viruses came out and any of that stuff, the way that the system was able to reap back money, or in other words, funnel and siphon the wealth. Instead of a transfer of wealth from the top to bottom, the transfer of wealth is until this very point right now has been instead happening from the bottom to the top side. And it's not by coincidence, family. It's not by coincidence, everyone. And I hope that by understanding what I'm sending as far as this message, it can only just expand your horizons a little bit to think outside the box and not just think about the simple fact of support of the hype, or whether you like an individual or you don't. This is much bigger than me. It's much bigger than you. It's much bigger than all of us. But this could gain traction to actually be the difference maker. And this message could possibly echo out not only amongst the ranks or amongst our community in AMC, but it could. If it comes to fruition the way that I can envision it and imagine it, this thing can bring not only justice, but history to all the other communities that have already been swept under the rug, whether with these reverse stock splits or bankruptcy situations. My message is, I'm gonna, it's a lot that I will most likely unpack in a live, but my message is, this is not about Adam Aaron. This is not about the board. This is not about this. If you look and you see, and I've mentioned this many times and many months ago, that the pattern is very clear. Even today, we had like 2-3 other companies that did some reverse stock splits. Like even Excella did what? A 200-to-1 reverse stock split. Could you imagine if we had to go through something like this? I know people will definitely be fighting then. But nevertheless, family, this plot, in my humble opinion, was made all the way back in January of 2021. The system knew that the retail and the public investors got one, turned on to the stock market. Two, not only did they get turned on to the stock market, but they've gained the access and the hack to the stock market. And the hack was pretty simple. Actually, it was pretty dumb. But nevertheless, it worked. It unlocked the key, right? And what that hack was simply buy and hold. If enough investors that have no relations to each other, like all you beautiful family apes here, came along for one cause and just simply bought and held. Simple. That was never the possibility, because in previous ages, the internet, the social media wasn't the way that it is now, and people were not just as it was like the materials and all the the atmosphere for the makeup of the perfect storm were just perfect. And it just happened that way. It couldn't have happened in any other era. It had to happen now. It only could have possibly happened now. It couldn't have happened before because it's just simply people were thinking about complete different things. It's just crazy how we are a part of something that is very historical. And it's at my most amazing wishes for us to also hit history with this, as the intentions of the beginning of this movement was. What is that? Making history? Not only just life-changing wealth, not only transfer of wealth from the greedy and the corrupt to us. I know some of us are greedy, maybe a little bit corrupt, but I'm no judge. But not on the level of these bloodsuckers up there. And rightfully so that we played this right. You came, you bought, you held, the float was bought up continuously, God knows how many times now, and it is not honored. The oath or the system oath, the systematic rightful oath was not handed to you. Your God-given right by participating in this thing called the stock market. The whole system failed us. The whole system failed you by basically drawing you in, and then for what's happening to us and many other communities as well. All these payment for order flows, all the illegal shorting, all the real or unreal synthetic or non-synthetic shares that are going on, allegedly. All that couldn't have happened from one individual. Ken Griffin, for example, can't just sign off on that and let that be the case all across the country or across all the platforms or across all trading brokerages. Even Gary Gensler can't. Even Adam Aaron can't, even if he wanted to. And I'm not, again, cutting Adam Aaron any slack. The moral of this message is not to start talking about the WWE mindset of yes or no, or I don't like him, or I hate him, or whatnot. How I feel about him and how you feel about him should not even be part of the conversation. That's just my humble opinion. However, how you feel about the CEO and the board is important as a shareholder, and that's into when the votings for who the CEO can be or to be stepped down and all that stuff, all that can take place at a different talk. This is more important right here. This is about entirely the whole entire system and unraveling a scheme that every stockholder is a victim to, in my humble opinion. Because it can't just be signed off on from one individual. This was signed off on from the smallest individual or group of authority to the highest, wherever that leads, or however high your imagination can go. Yes, that's my humble opinion. And in order for them to get that done, like to do that, to start spoofing all these orders, to send to dark pools, just take the money and give them IOUs, all that stuff. No one is going to agree to do something illegal unless they're licking their finger too. This is the world that we live in. Especially knowing these bloodsuckers, they're licking their hands upside and down. They knew that when people were going to come in and give them that money, these brokerages, the custodians, were taking the money. The market makers were making so much money, hand over fist. Of course, they will report some brokerages like Melvin and Archegos and all that stuff losing money and all that stuff because they want to make you feel like you are winning. They want to make you feel like you are winning, and the rug is being pulled while you don't even know it from underneath your feet. This is why I'm against this whole stupendous reverse split / conversion. And it gets into depth, not just because of that, but fundamentally, because I know that we can make it through this year and perhaps even most of next year, if not the entire of next year, without the need of even doing any dilution or any of that, because we have literally roughly between 450 to about $500 million in cash. And this last quarterly earnings showed that we are operating at a $220 million burnout rate for the year. So, and that's down 100 plus million from the quarterly earnings previous to it. Again, this is all year to date, this number that I'm giving you right now for a whole year. So if AMC was to open its doors and close them for a whole year, and you looked at it, AMC was basically, prior to this quarterly earning of looking at the numbers that they reported to us, we were technically opening for a whole year just so that we can lose or burn out or just burn a pile of $320 plus million. And that number have came down $100 plus million to about 220 mil in between those ranges. That's very, very, very impressive. Yeah, we're still climbing up. Yes, fundamentally, we are in a weak spot, but we are, like, as a business investor, when you look, and a business owner as well, when you look at an opportunity, you don't look at it when it's already formed. You look at it before it blooms. And we are in that position, in my humble opinion. I see that opportunity. All these other investors, the institutional investors, when people ask why these institutional investors still investing in AMC and all that stuff, because you don't invest in a fruit when it's a tree. You invest in it when it's a seed. And you see that seed would potentially be a very strong tree down the line. I see that personally. Again, I'm not a financial advisor. I just see that potential. Now, this reverse and conversion helps that side cover up all the craziness that was done from literally the beginning or toward the end of that COVID time frame all the way until now, because that was part of the plan. Part of their plan was to bring down the price of the stock. How? Well, you guys know everything I just mentioned and all the illegal ways they've been doing to us in these past few years. But that raised another question. Taking the money and giving you IOUs and all that stuff and making sure the price doesn't go up but go down is one part of it. And by coming down, they've been making money on short positions, shorting it back up and down, back up and down. A lot of money's being made, and that's going to be an important detail that I will talk about in just a second, and we'll get in depth about in the live that we'll do, maybe tonight or tomorrow. But when they figured out that won't be the problem of the price of the stock, because they had that illegally packed down and they had the solution for that. That raised another question. How do they put a cap on this at the end? How do they end this? How this whole thing comes to an end? Well, for us, it was always about MOAS. Buy, hold, let these people keep digging their graves deeper and deeper. Perfect plan for us, right? Well, for them, they were like, we're going to have to do it this way. Reverse stock splits. Because as the price goes down, the company financially is hurting. Every company they're shorting is going to be involved in something like that. That's the point of why they shorted it. To all the fundamentalists out there. But they're illegally going about winning their short positions. You guys have to understand, and this is why my message is like, I'm wishing that it reaches and echoes out to everybody, whether you're a yes or a no. I want you to understand why I'm against this reverse and this conversion into AMC. And then eventually it could echo out to all the other communities, because the outcome of this, I will lead to you in just a second, is pretty big, and it could affect them even way more than anything ever could possibly be. It could actually make history. I know you're probably excited, because I am very excited too. I just hope it works out that way. But leading up to that, you're like thinking like, okay, so they came up with the answer of how they could defeat the buy and hold. All this illegal crap they did to us for these past few years. Then they came up with another thing of how they can end this and save their butts so they don't have to answer to all these IOUs, all this fake crap and all this stuff. Reverse stock splits, conversions, bankruptcies, and some other companies, they illegally was able to bring them down completely. Yeah, so many of them had terrible financials, terrible business models and all this stuff, but they were still synthetically or artificially brought down. So there was another problem they had that they had to come up with, or an answer, because another question came up. So if we got that lockdown, this is on their side. If they got that lockdown and they got that lockdown, how could they make it all seem obviously legit? Well, look at the companies. They're hurting. They come out. They all say we're hurting. Our stock price is down. We need to do a reverse stock split. Oh, we'll get a NASDAQ compliance letter. See, this is how this is signed off on so many levels, from the bottom all the way to the top. So they got the whole thing planned. All this, in my humble opinion, was planned since literally probably January 2021, probably even a little bit before that. And we've been in it all along. And this is why they were all humbly all along in cool waters, because they knew it would lead up to this eventually. How can they get screwed? If this thing with the reverse split and the conversion does not go through with AMC, because I just laid out that mathematically, cash-wise, the manipulative talk that, or agenda that's given out about AMC, that it's gonna go bankrupt if this thing don't go through, that's the issue. Is like, I was able, hopefully in these few minutes in the beginning of this video, I was able to show you that that's not even a worry. In fact, they can revisit this talk about reverse split and talks blah 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 conversion next year. In fact, if they can come back next year, because we can make it with the cash on hand until next year, our burnout with all the movies that are coming out, all the popcorn that's going to get better, European market is already turning a profit for AMC. It's no longer turning a loss. It's turning a profit, like 65, 67 million at a profit. That's just Europe markets for AMC. In here, our burnout rate in the US is literally 100+ million less per year than what it was last year, just from the first quarter alone. And we know that this is nothing compared to the amount of movies that are coming out. It is not hard to project or be able to hypothetically project where this thing is going or how this seed is growing. So the fact that we would need to nurture it with money now, or by the reverse stock split and all this stuff, is complete. It's kind of like overwatering a plant. Yeah, plants, if you overwater it, it will get poisoned. It'll die. This thing would be able to do, in my humble opinion, every cleanup that they need in AMC. But if they're not successful in doing so, you know how effed they're going to be? See, I washed out from saying the whole word. They're so effed, family, because I'm personally working on something very strong. If this thing don't work out for them, because first I'm an activist. I'm joining all the magnificent other brothers and sisters, but the Magnificent Six and Magnificent Seven, and they're speaking. Everybody has their agenda as far as how they're going about it. But I'm supporting anybody that supports no against this. But my reasoning, I want you all to understand my reasoning for why the no. It's not because I just have a hard on for freaking Adam Aaron or the board or blah 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 or whatever of that. I can care less about them. I care about the family. I care about my investment, and that's literally and most likely basically everybody else's in this case. And more importantly, I don't like injustice. I see the writing all over the wall. Hopefully what I'm talking about here could expand your horizons a little bit more, so you can see that it's not just about the yes and the no. It's not just about who do you support and who you don't. It's not about being cool or not, because none of that shit puts food on the table for the ones that have a low amount of shares. And this whole notion of you don't trust the board or the CEO, get out of the stock and all that stuff, that's the talk of people who probably just started investing like what, probably 6 months ago to a year ago. That's not investor talk. That's not realistic talk. That's not a grown-up talk. So I don't have no interest in going back and forth with these. I want to gain as many views and sub characters and realities that and characteristics that came on just mainly for that purpose. I'm speaking to you big stuff. I'm speaking to you the whole image. I'm speaking to you about how this thing is against a whole nation, a whole people, a whole agenda of group of people, the 99%. So how could this completely ultimately topple them if this reverse and conversion doesn't go through? Ultimately, this could topple them, because what I'm working on, and I'm handing out I'm handing out my hand, putting it out, and I'm telling every other content creator to help me foot this thing forward. And I know my brothers got my back, but I want every other person, every other investor, every other person, not even necessarily just in AMC, but in any other community, to foot this thing forward with me. Because if this thing goes through and shows eventually in this court case, anything shows about any synthetics or any of that stuff, the number one thing that will happen right away, that's what I'm keeping my eyes on. No one is talking about this. But that's been in the back of my head literally for so many months, just waiting for the right time and the right storm to happen. And this is getting close to it, and this is getting close to that time. There is something called a disgorgement lawsuit. Disgorgement is, search it up on, maybe I'm pronouncing it even a little bit wrong or different. But if you look at what that lawsuit is, it basically, the entities that get sued by that, they're basically being sued to bring back and pay back all sorts of profits and money they have made in any illegal doing actions, if approved that they did. Imagine this, brothers and sisters. Imagine if Citadel made billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, which I'm sure they have, off of all this illegal shorting crap. Imagine every short hedge fund. Imagine every broker that did some BS. All that would be asked to be paid back. All that money. Not some. All. Disgorgement. And where would that go? Not like the normal fines that come from the SEC. It'll go back to the people on behalf of that lawsuit, or the people the party that got affected, which event in this case goes back to everybody, the 99%. That's where I care about. That's what I'm shooting for. That's what I want. And this has, like, literally, like, all we have to do is foot this thing forward, and history would be beyond imagination. Like, history will be remembered forever from this. So write down your thoughts, write down your comments. I will have a live to speak more in depth about the discouragement lawsuit. I will have a live also to explain more in depth about the idea. And if people have questions, put them in the comment section, and be ready for the next live coming up, so you can ask me those same questions so that I could even answer them for you, face to face, I guess, or not face to face, but face to phone on the live, to answer you why my mind, or why do I see that theory, this picture of this whole overall thing about the plan or the gimmick that they're doing on us, especially not just us, but all these other companies and all these other stocks, so they can gain through all these reverse stock splits and all these bankruptcies that they're causing illegally on all these other companies. in order for them to gain the profits, and for order for also for them to not get margin called and get completely wiped out and transfer all their wealth. So with that being said, again, thank you for the warm wishes and for the support that you guys had with me when I was doing the procedure, for all of you, those of you who did. And again, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments section. Much love, AB Investments.